So here's my 2014 Yamaha V Deluxe, and I'm going to be doing the front fork oil change flush. And I've owned this motorcycle for probably 3 years now, and I don't think it's ever been done, so I think it's due every 2 years-ish from what Yamaha recommends. But in order to get the forks out, you got to be able to access this lower clamp, and these covers are currently blocking your access. The only way to get these covers off is quite the process. You have to remove your whole front fairing, you have to remove your headlight, your signal light brackets, all the associated wiring. You have to remove your instrument cluster and even the handlebars, because you need to take off this upper clamp, and then these tubes will slide off of here. So I've decided to make a cut here to allow me access to my lower clamp bolts, because I think probably to do this job, to take apart the whole front end of this motorcycle, is probably going to be like 3 hours at least. And if you have even a fork seal go on you or something like that, you can, with this modification here, you'll be able to get your front forks off and get your fork seals changed out and get back riding pretty quickly, so without taking the whole front end of your motorcycle apart. I've already done the other side, so I'll show you how it turned out. So here's the side that I've done already, and I'll show you guys how I did it. I can now access my lower clamp bolts, and there's only about a centimeter or a half an inch that you got to take off of there to get your Allen wrench in there to loosen those bolts. So I didn't really want to do this originally because I really like the factory look, but at the same time I don't want to spend a whole bunch of extra time disassembling the front end of my motorcycle and removing all the electronics and fairing and instrument cluster and possibly even the handlebars just to do a fork oil change, or even change a fork seal for that matter. So, but now I can access these lower clamp bolts, and we should be good to go. The problem is if you did want to do just simple, like suck it out, if you take this, you won't be able to really get this fork top cap off because of the fairing bracket, the handlebars, and then the fork spring is in behind there, and there's no way to get that fork spring out with these forks in the motorcycle. So I decided to do this modification so I can do fork oil changes quickly. If I have a seal blowout, I can do that quickly and just keep on riding and not have to worry about spending the whole weekend tearing apart the front end of the motorcycle. So before you're getting started here, a quick tip is to get your motorcycle up so it's sitting level. You can do this on the side stand if you like to, but it's just sometimes hard to keep the wheel turned to the left if it's on the side stand. So I've just got a simple motorcycle jack. I'm a little bit spoiled. I do have a motorcycle lift, so that did make this job a little bit easier. Couple of quick tips that I found that really helped me out was just use a piece of rubber drawer liner even to between the concrete floor or your motorcycle lift and your jack. That stops it from moving around and causing a whole bunch of headaches. Or you can bolt it down, but this works just fine. And underneath the frame, I've got a rubber pad. That actually makes life a little easier too, because it actually holds the motorcycle quite well with this scissor jack in there. I'm just right on the front of the frame there, and haven't had any issues. Make sure it's strapped down and secure, and we'll get at it. Here's some of the tools you're going to need. You're going to need some cleaner. I'm going to use isopropyl alcohol because like every other motorcyclist, I like to keep my motorcycle polished up, and the tape won't stick to that to those covers if it's got a bunch of wax and stuff on it. So you want to clean your fork covers so you can get the tape to stick. I'm going to use a Dremel. I found it was the easiest for me. So you need some metal cutoff wheels. You need some fine tip marking pens. You need some drill bits, and I'll go over that there. This is a 3/16, and I found that worked really well for the radius. A drill stop, if you got one. A ruler that starts with 0 on the very edge is really helpful. Some rulers the 0 is indented, so you got to just be careful of that. You're going to need some finishing tools for the Dremel. There's the cutoff wheel I'm going to use. I'm going to be using cobalt drill bits. Now, cobalt drill bits are extremely tough. They're really good. They're really good for drilling through stainless steel. And you're going to need a center punch. I'm going to use an auto punch because I find that it's just going to be a little bit easier rather than the hammer and punch method. You don't want to make a big dent in your fork covers. And then some polish for afterwards. And I'm going to use some calipers to do a scribe, my Dremel. I made a little protective plate here. This is just a piece of tin I had laying around. Put some tape over it so you can see if you're contacting it, if you're cutting too deep. Some tape, some gloves, and some paper towel and some rags, safety glasses, and some extra lighting is also going to help. All right, everyone, we're just going to start the process here. Let's use my rubbing alcohol and a soft paper towel, and we'll get the surface clean. Now, just a quick note that these covers, they are stainless steel, so you're going to need, if you're going to use an old drill bit, it might be a little bit tough, so make sure you have a high quality drill bit to get through this stainless steel. Stainless steel is very inherently difficult to drill through. So you just want to get this fork covers clean, get all your polish and wax off of there. That way the tape's going to stick nice and you won't have to worry about it moving around or anything like that. So, okay, we're back here. I've got my tape on. That piece of tin I showed you earlier, I got it jammed up underneath here because I don't want that cutting wheel on the Dremel to contact this lower fork tube cover. This lower fork tube cover is actually bolted to your lower clamp. So once you remove the upper clamp, you remove this top clamp. There's two Allen head bolts in behind there. You can remove that, and then this lower cover will come off. Just for reference. So with it being curved, you can get this piece of tin underneath there to give you a little bit of protection. So if you see flecks of tape coming off, and you'll know you're cutting a little too deep. So we want to try to avoid that. With your straight edge, you can transfer this line over to the tape here, like I've kind of done there. And then we're going to draw our line. And I put my tape on so it's right level with the rest of this upper fork tube cover here. And that seemed to work quite well for me because you can just kind of trace your line from the bottom of the tape. And to do the other side, I calculated it out and did a little bit of measuring on the other side. And you need to set your measuring device or your calipers to 1 centimeter. So calipers work good because this allows us to basically scribe a line on the tape, and then we can just fill it in with our marker after the fact, just like so. And there we have it. And to fill it in so I can see it better, we're just going to line up our straight edge, draw a line. So there we go. There we've got our cut path, and now we've got to find the center of where we're going to drill so we can maintain that inside radius right here. I don't know if you can see that, but it's right there. And then we can always do this outside radius on the bottom half here after the fact. Okay, to find the center of where we're going to drill our hole here, the 3/16 drill bit is roughly 4.6 millimeters across, and divide that in half, you get 2.3. So what I'm going to do is going to basically line my marks up here, and then also make a little bit of a scribe there. And then I'm also going to do the same thing on this side, this line there. And that is going to give me my center, where I'm going to make my center punch mark. And just to clarify it so I can see it better, we're going to use our pen and make a dot. So measure twice, cut once. roughly 2.3 millimeters over and 2.3 millimeters down. We'll make our center punch, and then we're going to drill a pilot hole. Okay, so we'll make our center punch mark on our dot, and it's important to get a good strike with a fine tip center punch. There we go. It's kind of hard to see, but it is there. So give her one more for good luck there. And now we'll drill our pilot hole and our final hole. Once you have your punch mark, you can always just stick your drill bit in there and just confirm that you're going to be just on the inside of these lines. Okay, here's a little bit of a closer view for you. This arrow here is indicating where the lower cover is sitting just inside the upper cover, and I put that arrow there so I know that I got to start being real careful with my Dremel, cutting this little section out. Good idea. Just go nice and slow, and there's my center punch mark, and we'll begin to drill the holes. Another thing I did too is I strapped down my handlebars to the one side just to make sure that the forks don't move on me during this operation. All right, here we go, drilling the pilot hole. Make sure you cover up your fender. You don't want the little metal shavings and so forth getting onto your paint, and or even your drill or something contacting the paint. You don't want a scratched paint job after this, so we're going to go ahead and start drilling our pilot hole. Use a smaller drill bit. I'm not sure what size this is, but it's quite a bit smaller than our final hole, but pilot hole is definitely going to help you doing this. It'll be pretty tough to get that 3/16 drill bit through this stainless steel here without doing a pilot hole. So I've got my pilot hole drilled now. You don't have to really worry about hurting anything in behind there. In behind there is this whole lower clamp. So that's why I don't have the drill stop on this one. But it looks like it's pretty good, and we'll switch to the 3/16 drill bit. All right, we've got our 3/16 drill bit loaded up, the cobalt one. You can use like titanium coated or whatnot. This is the inherent nature of stainless steel. It's kind of difficult to work with when it comes to drilling, but we'll go ahead and drill this hole here for the inside radius. Now just go nice and slow to make sure that you're getting a good hole and that your drill bit is not going to want to wander. And we're almost there. And that's all it is. So there's our final hole, and it looks like it's pretty much bang on inside inside our original lines. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use our Dremel to cut from this corner inside there, and then we're going to cut this piece out here. So we'll get started on that. All right, we're ready to make our cut. I'm going to use electric Dremel. You can use air tool if you want. The electric one, I just find it's going to work good for this job. And I've got my metal cutting disc already loaded up. And safety glasses on, of course. I'm wearing gloves. Protect your hands from those little metal filings that are pretty annoying when they get on you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this top cut first, and then I'm going to move to this lower cut here going down the side. So we'll get at her. Now just go slow. The first pass is going to be scoring just on the inside of my pen mark there, because it's going to be easier to later on use like a carbide bit or something to clean it up. So you don't want to be right on the line, you want to be just on the inside of the line. and go nice and slow just on the inside, and that's my first cut. And I just want to describe it, make sure that it's in line with everything else. Just about through, so just keep checking to make sure that you're not taking too much out. And there we have it, the first cut is done. We'll move on to the second cut here. The first pass I'm going to make is describe my line just on the inside of this pin mark here. And remember, you got that arrow there, so that's the place you got to be really careful, because you don't want to score your inner tube. See, now I've scored it, so now it's just making it a couple more passes, and the cutoff wheel is going to want to follow that line. Okay, so I've cut like 90% the way through everything, and when you get down to here, we got to be really careful, right, because of the lower tube, the inner tube. So now we're just going to go real nice and slow. You can already see this piece is quite loose. So I'm just going to take just a smidgen more out of this little section here, and then it should be ready to come off of there. There we go. There's just a very small portion of it hanging on. I can see this piece wobbling, so I know I can just basically break this off of here. And be careful, it's hot. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is when you do make these cuts, be careful not to overheat the metal, or else it's going to blue. Just take your time, one pass at a time, and just slowly work it down, making sure that you don't overheat your metal. So now you can see this piece will just pop right off of there, just like so. And it's about that big of a piece. And this is the piece of tin I inserted in there earlier. And it looks like I just barely nicked it, which is good. I'll get the camera up closer here and you can see our cut here. Okay, here's a closer view. Now you can see in behind there, that's your lower clamp. And it looks pretty good. We don't have any kind of touch marks from the cutoff wheel. And right here was where the lower tube is. And there's not even a mark on that masking tape. So that's why I used this little insert piece here, because you can see I just barely touched it, which is good because I don't want to have marks on this lower tube. Now you can get in here and loosen your lower clamp bolts. There we go. I pulled all the tape off so you can see how good of a line that looks, and there's not even a mark on this lower tube cover, or fork cover. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stick this piece of tin back in here to protect the lower fork tube, and then I'm going to use some small Dremel bits to clean up all these rough edges, and then clean up after that. You can kind of see a little bit of residual from the adhesive on the tape, but that's no big deal. That'll come off pretty easily with rubbing alcohol. Okay, the next bit I'm going to use is this very fine tip carbide burr bit for Dremels. I don't know if you can see that, but it's in a shape of a cone almost, and that's going to allow me to get nice and close to get our cut lines cleaned up nice. So we'll start with this and get everything cleaned up nice, and then we'll move to another attachment. Okay, the next attachment I'm going to use is a flat carbide bit. That's just going to clean up this upper edge right here. We got to take like maybe a 1/2 millimeter off of there. Now just be careful you don't contact your bolt if you want it to look pretty. So you're going to come in, kind of come in at an angle like so, and we're just going to tidy up that cut line there and any other little spots along here. And with these carbide bits, you don't have to use a whole bunch of pressure. This stuff will cut super easy with one of these bits on here. Okay, there we go. This is nice and flush here now. I'll get you guys a close up here in a second. And this edge here is all nice and cleaned up. And I've kind of just profiled this bottom lip here so it's not so sharp, so the outside radius portion of it. So as you can see there, our upper cut line is basically flush. We're going to use a different attachment just to kind of polish it up. And our up and down cut there is also looking really good there. And there's very little contact to my little piece of tin here, so that's perfect. It's turning out well. Final finishing stage, I'm going to use this diamond tipped or even very fine abrasive Dremel tool. And then now we're just going to go over and clean up any sharp edges, and we'll see how that goes. Well, there we have it. That's the final product all cleaned up. As you can see, we still maintained our lower outside radius and our inside upper radius here. So that should prevent any kind of spider cracks or anything from forming. And you can get at your lower clamp bolts now, and it basically looks factory. So that makes me happy, and now all that's left to do is just polish her up. But I think before I do that, I'll do my fork oil change in flush and then get out and do some riding hopefully.